Is that alarming?
You do that by getting in their faces, making the game uncomfortable.
I think what Talay is saying is 100% right.
Is he the best forward in the league at the moment?
Put your foot on the throat of the opposition and not let them get up for air. I think we have different views on this.
Yeah.
And I got abused from Arnie after the game saying, you're back on penalties, you should have been on penalties the whole time. A little blowout of... What?
That was very out of context.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is football.
Hello and welcome back to Total A-Leagues. James Dodd in the chair with you again this week, joined as ever by my, I'd say your friends, aren't we? Tommy Orr, Daniel McBreen, how are we, gents?
Jury's out on that one.
Acquaintances at the moment.
Work colleagues, I think is what they call that. We've got so much coming up on the show today. We're going to look back at Sydney against Auckland, New Zealand Derby this weekend, Melbourne Derby as well, some of the best transfers, some fun stuff as well. Let's get into our moments of the round, shall we? I'm going to go with Macca first because I know he's going to talk about Newcastle Jets. So what's yours, Macca?
Well, I'm going to go for Melbourne City in the Asian Champions League. They haven't had the best run in the A-League lately, but they're getting the job done in the Asian competition, and they love a late-minute goal as well, don't they? And Max Burgess has been doing pretty good as well since he's come back. So it's the first time since 2020 since an Australian team has made it through the qualifying stage. Obviously, there's a new format as well in recent years, so it's great to see. And they're forging ahead, already qualified for the next round.
Yeah, big prize money on offer as well, it's worth saying. And you could see, when Eunice scored that goal to cement their spot, what it meant to the team, the celebration. So it's great to see, and fingers crossed for the whole A-League that they can go all the way.
Box office Jets again?
Yep, it's got to be. Why not? 7 in a row. Another great performance against the Glory. Bayless with a fantastic first goal to open the scoring. But they're just so good to watch, aren't they? And they scored 3 very good goals. And I think they controlled this game from start to finish and, have a few different records in their sights now. I think that's 7 in a row. And I think 10 is the record that they're going for. Also going for the most goals scored in the season. I think they need 24 goals in their last 9 games. Does that sound right? Yeah. So, I think there's plenty to play for, and who knows if they'll change the history books come the end of the season.
Yeah, very much so. My moment this week is going to be Charles Nduka for Melbourne victory. Had that bit of a disappointing game by his standards in his debut against the Mariners. He was guilty of missing a gilt-edged chance in that one. But this was a great finish from the Japanese forward. And it's very interesting because I think a lot of the talk around Charles Nduka since coming into the A-League is that he's a signing that was made off of data and analytics, and it was Jamestown Analytics who are the drivers behind that. They're in partnership with Melbourne Victory. They're at Hearts, Como, Brighton as well, Tony Bloom's club. So he's got a stake in Victory. And for Charles Nduka to come from J3 to the A-League, a lot of people are saying, is there not someone that you could have brought in from the youth academy who could be doing that job? But he's actually started to play a lot better. He took his goal really well at the weekend, so it was a nice moment for him.
Yeah, but if the data says that he's really fast and he makes runs in behind and he can run off Matter and dink the ball over the keeper, then the data's great.
That's right, exactly. And saw the nice little J3 celebration there, so he's obviously been listening to some of his critics.
Exactly, he's obviously heard what Tommy always had to say on the Let's get into Sydney against Auckland, shall we? This was a massive game for not just Sydney and Auckland, but obviously for Newcastle Jets at the top of the ladder as well. Let's start with this moment because this is before the goals were scored late at the end. Sam Cosgrove, now VAR looked at this and deemed it was not worthy of a red card.
I think we have different views on this.
Yeah.
If that was given a red, I would have no qualms whatsoever. Where the ball is and where he puts his foot, he clearly is going for the player and not the ball, in my view. If that was given a red card, I would have just went, fair play.
Yeah, I agree. You couldn't really argue if they did give him a red card, but for me, I don't think it was justified intervening once the initial decision was no red card. Because if you see the force, I don't think he fully stood on him. It was more just his foot was dangling on top of him rather than the actual...
Dangling. I'll get Sam Cosgrove to dangle his foot on you and see how you feel.
Well, to be fair, Sydney FC's bench probably didn't blow up about it as much as they could have. I think that, not to say that would have influenced the decision, but there wasn't a huge amount of protest about it. But Sydney FC in this game, you got to say, I think they'll rue all the missed opportunities they had. Campazano in particular in the first half. They should have put this game to bed. And when Popovic scored what we thought was the winner with a few minutes left, you thought they were going to see it through. But Auckland, have to give them credit, found a way to claw back.
So that's 2 wins in 10 for Sydney FC now. They're 7 points off Newcastle at the top of the league. They take the lead through Popovic. That late own goal there for Alex Grant, there's nothing you can do about that really, is there? But is it... Is that alarming for Sydney FC? 2 wins in 10?
Yeah.
Are they trending in the wrong direction? Or did you see enough from the Sky Blues in this game that thought, actually, they probably did deserve to win that?
Well, in that game, they should have. Campazano should have scored. Stammer apologised at the end. He had 2 really good chances that we would say on another day he probably would have scored, and he thinks he should have scored. Michael Vowd had a really great game as well.
Yep.
We did see, I think, enough in this game to see that they can beat anyone.
Yeah.
They are still a good team. But that consistency or inconsistency is alarming for Sydney FC supporters. 2 in 10 for a team that wants to be near the top of the table and have been at the top of the table. So the fact that they're still that close to the top of the table shows how well they were going at the start and how much they've dropped off.
And I think it's a team that, when kind of pulling a draw from the jaws of defeat, they like to say it sometimes, a team that kind of finds a way not to win the game is a team that's often lacking confidence. And I think that is the case at the moment. We see signs of the team that is playing some great football and doing some great things, but their confidence levels just aren't at the highest they could be at the moment.
Confidence is a very key word there because it brings us nicely onto the next subject. So, Mohamed Toure, he was seen at the end of the game exchanging his opinions with Talay after the Sydney boss came onto the field and lambasted him for what we seen, and it was obviously him deciding to take that shot from a position where he probably didn't need to do that. Before we get into how we think that affected and what we think the aftermath of that will be, let's have a listen to Talay. This is what he said in his post-match press conference when he was asked about the confrontation between him and his striker after the game.
I just thought he could manage the game a little bit better, that's all.
When you say manage the game better, what do you mean by that?
Just that moment where he got the ball and he could probably not shoot from distance and retain possession so we can get the team up, and then we can still keep the ball and not give it to the opposition so they can come back at us.
Gotcha.
They're all learning moments for players, man.
Yeah.
So, learning moments for players, gents. Is that a learning moment for Mohamed Toure, or is that something that absolutely should not have been played out on the pitch in full range of the Paramount Plus cameras last night? Should that have been done in the dressing room?
I think in an ideal world, they'll both say what should have happened in the change room, but sometimes when you're running high on emotion and that happens, I think what Talay is saying is 100% right. Al-Hassani's a quick player. He's going nowhere really. He's got a few players around him. Just take it towards the corner. It was the 92nd minute. You go down in the corner, you waste a bit of time. Even if it goes out for a goal kick, the ball boys can get the ball over a bit slow. It changes the dynamic, and it just sort of gave them the ball back quickly, and now here they come back at you again. And that extra minute that could have been wasted down in the corner, that's game management. And it is a learning moment. Like, the chances of you scoring from there are almost...
Risk versus reward,
correct,
essentially. And
exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you in terms of the moment, but I think, a lot of managers that I had in my career often wouldn't talk after the game immediately. They'd kind of wait an hour or maybe even talk the next day in the training session because, they don't want to say something they regret. And I think that was a classic example that, coaches should sometimes just bite their tongue, simmer down, and then maybe be more calculated and behind closed doors give players more constructive things, because I understand, he might have had merits to go after the player, but I don't think it helps anyone when it plays out in the public domain like that.
Well, this is interesting because with Talay, you've seen a head coach this season who is, he came under fire last year when Sydney missed the finals. He signed a 1-year deal when there was potentially a 2-year deal on the table for him. The club, pivoted on that. You've seen that Sydney have won 2 of their last 10 games. Did that to you look like a coach who had also not lost his temper, because if he is a fiery character, but had almost had enough, and that was something that boiled over there? Because we've seen Sydney have bad results this season and we haven't seen that from him. And actually, as someone who's sat in many of Talay press conferences, his press conferences have been a lot better this year because he's explained a little bit more. He hasn't been in so much of a hurry to get out of there.
Yeah.
He's fronted up when they've had bad results. Do you think that's actually a coach who's feeling the pressure?
Oh, without a doubt. Like we said, in a perfect world, it all happens. But when emotions run and frustrations are high, sometimes you do things. And he as Tommy said, you could have delivered the same message tomorrow or an hour later or at the end when they went in the change room, and it would have been delivered in a manner that was less confronting. Yeah. And you're not going to get that deliberate bite back from... He would have thought about the way he delivered his message, and then Al-Hassan probably would have went, yep, I should have done that. Instead of having this big altercation, it's my fault we conceded at the other end.
I'm sure both of them would wake up today regretting that situation, for sure.
Yeah.
So Auckland, they were the beneficiaries at the end there of that Alex Grant own goal. A point for them again at Leichhardt Oval was a good result in the circumstances. They head into the New Zealand Derby this weekend, as do Wellington Phoenix, who also drew 2-2 with Western Sydney Wanderers on Friday. Does that kind of give Auckland an extra boost going into this game? Because we know that they've had such a dominant run in this New Zealand Derby. They've won every single edition of this game so far. It's 5 in a row. They're going for 6. Does that give, Auckland a big boost going into this one?
Well, I think so. I think as well they'll realise how fortunate might not be the right word, but they were in the end lucky to get away with the draw against Sydney, and I think that it not a wake up call, because they certainly weren't poor against Sydney FC, but you spoke about it on last week's show, Macca. They just aren't the force that they were last season, and they don't strike fear into the opposition like they did before. And I think that Wellington in recent weeks probably has been unlucky with the results they've been getting. I think they've been playing some great football, scoring. I think they scored the second most goals in the league this season. So Auckland, if they're not careful, they could get unstuck in this game.
Only problem with Wellington is that they've got the worst defensive record in the league. Yeah. The big plus for them is that Sam Cosgrove, with his yellow card, will now miss the derby. Yeah. So that's a big loss for Auckland as well. Look, Wellington have to win one. It's getting to the point now where this derby is just going to be, they're the little brothers down the road and we're just going to win this one and move on. So they have to come out with their tails up in, I would say, over the top derby aggression and just they have to, by hook, by crook, they have to get a result in this one.
And I think the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be to finally win one of these games. And derbies are often emotional games, and I think that's the key. You just touched on it. They've got to play with their hearts on their sleeve, with high intensity. And I think if this game becomes a game of chess, Auckland will win. So I think Wellington needs to throw Auckland off their game, and you do that by getting in their faces, making the game uncomfortable for them.
Well, we'll come back onto Auckland because there is an interesting story that's emerged from the club over the last few weeks or so. But with Wellington in particular, Ifeanyi Eze's been in great form this season. He's someone that is, even when he's not having his best game, looks to be a really difficult player to contain, because he can produce something out of nowhere, albeit through brute force or through a moment of magic. How much will he be relishing coming up against an Auckland team that looks more vulnerable this season than they have done in their first season, where they were so formidable?
Yeah, he's a player that's brimming with confidence, and if you look at the goals he's scored this season, he's scored all types of different goals. He can run in behind. He's alive in the box for the tap-ins. We saw the goal against Western Sydney last week. So he can do everything, and I think that without him, I think it would have been a very different picture for Wellington so far this season. And I think the focus for them going into this game needs to be on how can we get him the most service we can in this game against a backline that, as you just touched on, is probably lacking a little bit of confidence as well.
When you talk about the different styles of goals that he can score, we've seen him score against Auckland outside the box. We've seen him early in the season, a little delicate chip against Perth. The overriding one you are tending to see is these ones. He's powerful running, he's strong aggression, where he forces things into the opposition into submission, where he doesn't give up. It's like he's not going to let any stone unturned. Now that's a really good header. But I think he's a really well-rounded striker. That power and aggression puts opposition off. And he's going to have a good battle against those Auckland defenders, because they don't mind a battle themselves.
Well, you're a centre forward. Is he the best forward in the league at the moment, Ifeanyi Eze? Is he the most complete striker that's in the A-League?
He'd have to be up there, and the other guy who's missing is Cosgrove. So we could have had two of the best in the league at the moment all round, but one's not going to be there.
So there has been a departure from Auckland, and that's Elias Bukarim, who was their strength and conditioning coach. Now, he left, I think, 7 days ago is when he departed the club. There were kind of reports that maybe things weren't necessarily well. The players weren't overly happy with maybe the detail in the training sessions, in terms of they maybe felt they were being worked too hard. I mean, I think there's a clip that's come out from the documentary about Auckland at the moment, where it's real, the fine detail of what Elias was doing at Auckland was we're going to run you and we're going to work you very, very hard, and you won't like it, but you'll grow to like it and you will see the benefit of that. Do you think that's maybe come as a product of the fact that we've seen Auckland this year, which we've alluded to in previous shows, is that last year they were so strong in the latter stages of games. This year it looks as though that hasn't necessarily been the case, and it's almost flipped. Do you think there's some correlation between that, and maybe that could be why Auckland haven't been the sort of team that they are this year?
Well, I find that one a hard one to talk about, because without actually talking to the players or being there or getting that information from them, I find that one a hard one to talk about. we have noticed that they're not as lethal as they were. They used to be able to grind out results and they'd score so many late goals and didn't concede. Well, it's sort of flipped the opposite way this year. It could, all these small little things have an effect, but I couldn't comment to whether that's what the players are saying.
Well, I think as well, you have to say, it is a big gesture for the senior players to go and try and get rid of someone in a position like that, if that is what happened. Maybe they weren't feeling heard. Sometimes I've been in teams as well where, strength and conditioning coach, sometimes they'll want you to work, but then the players will say, we're really sore from this yesterday, and you meet somewhere in the middle. I think when those conversations don't happen, that's when friction can happen. And there's no doubt, though, make no mistake, that I think at the end of this season, you'll look back at this and it'll either be seen as a masterstroke or maybe a moment where division was created for Auckland. So I think this will be one you can bookmark.
So that's a huge game coming up this weekend, the New Zealand Derby. There is another derby Saturday night. It's the Melbourne Derby. Melbourne City against Melbourne Victory. Gents, let's start with Melbourne City, shall we? Because it's been a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde for Aurelio Vidmar's team this season. They've been absolutely sensational in the Asian Champions League Elite. They've qualified for the knockout round, which no team has done since victory in 2020. They've been really, really good in that competition against some really powerful teams in Asia. But if you look at what they've done in the A-League, it looks like maybe they've struggled with essentially goal scoring has been their biggest issue this season, and kind of was similar last year. But is there anything, Mackie, that you can put your finger on as to why you think the team has been so different in those two competitions?
In those two competitions, it's a different type of game, I suppose. Generally, when you're in a intercontinental competition, the competition is harder, so you might not be... So in the A-League, we would expect that Melbourne City are going to be pressing from the front, be dominant, keep possession, breaking teams down. It's a different game when maybe you'll be sitting a little bit deeper, riding against pressure, going on the break, and then coming with speed later in the game as well to try and snatch things, which is what they've done. It doesn't look good for City in the league. 2 wins in 11. We talk about Sydney, 2 wins in 10. They're 2 wins in 11. They've really struggled to score goals. It has been a huge problem for them. You think about the players last year who were causing all kinds of problems. Well, Lecky hasn't been around all year. Naboo, no.
Jonathan Cohen's not there.
Jonathan Cohen's gone. Cohen's been
problems.
in and out. And last year we talked about they were relying on a lot of young players in that front third, but it seems to be they're relying on them even more this year for a longer period, and they don't have those X-factor players to come in, and hopefully they can get more minutes towards the end of the season. But that X-factor for Melbourne City just hasn't been there.
Yeah, I think particularly losing the last derby as well, I'm sure that'll be in their memory as well. But this is a huge game for both of these teams because it's 6 versus 7.
Yeah.
You feel like this is going to have big repercussions for, even potentially finals places come the end of the season. But I completely agree with you, Macca. I think that we've seen it with Aurelio Vidmar's team before when he was at Adelaide. I think the games where they're very much kind of compact, very difficult to break down, and then they look to counter-attack, that suits his teams. And I think in the A-League, when they have to be more of the protagonist and make the game, that they seem to struggle with that a little bit more. But it has to be said, with the new signings they've got, some more firepower in the front third, this could be the weekend they announce their arrival back to the A-League.
So Melbourne Victory, another team that have somewhat struggled for consistency this season. The man behind us, Juan Mata, was asked about that after their game recently. Here's what he said to Michael Zapponi on Paramount Plus.
One of the things I've noticed is that, especially since the start of the new year, the inconsistency. A good result and then an average result. Obviously, that's something that you need to correct coming into finals. What do you think it is?
Yeah, and it's something that Arthur keeps talking about, consistency, and we are seeing it in the league that most of the teams are not able to win a couple of games in a row. Only Newcastle are doing that. That's why they're at the top, and we need to get a momentum in which we win 2-3 games in a row, and we're going to be in the position or closer to the position that we want to be, but we definitely need to improve our consistency.
Well, he's been pretty consistent himself, Juan Mata, this year. Most assists in the league, more chances created than any other player. But, gents, why have they been topsy-turvy this year, Victory? Is it just the nature of the A-League and something that Juan probably has to get used to with the calibre of player around him? Or is there something that's a bit deeper line with Arthur Dillis' team?
Well, Juan Mata there, he mentioned Newcastle. I think it's a mentality. Newcastle has this mentality now. They've found their rhythm. We're going out, we're going to win every game. Now, you can't have Melbourne Victory go out and win 4-0 against Sydney FC and then turn around and get beat by the Mariners.
Yeah, who were down to 10 men.
Yeah, and then just scrape past the Knicks, who were down the bottom as well, and then get held to a draw by Brisbane. That's a mentality. You have to go out with the same mentality, and it's almost as though it's like, we've got a big game today, guys. It's Sydney FC. We've got to go win. Yes, we've done it. All right, we did that.
Yeah.
You've got to have that same mentality next week and put your foot on the throat of the opposition and not let them get up for air.
Well, Victory did lose the first derby of the season this year. Something that's different about this one is the fact that there's going to be two, albeit one of them is a former Melbourne City player, two former Melbourne Victory players in this game, and that'd be Ryan Teague and Daniel Arzani if he plays. How much of a difference does that make? And do you think this game probably needs a little bit of those two to be targeted by Victory? Is that going to be an aspect of this game that will probably lift both sets of players?
I'm sure they'll get a reception, whether they come off the bench or... But yeah, 100% they should. I think, there was a lot spoken about when they went there and how, fans weren't happy about it, and fair enough. And I'm sure that the players will have that in the back of their mind to let them know they're there early and maybe make it a difficult night for them if they can with... kind of imposing themselves physically against those players. But, on the contrast to that, I think those two players, this would be a real big opportunity for them to kind of announce themselves back in the league, and with a World Cup on the horizon, I think these are the kind of games they're not going to need to step up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was a Victory player, I'd be right into Ryan Teague's ear going, you were good for us, why are you so bad for them? Because he hasn't been anywhere near how good he was. That's not having to dig at him, it's just his form since he's come back. I'd be straight into his ear, and if he ever made a mistake, you'd be like, oh, there it is again, another one. Like, they're the kind of things in a derby that you're trying to get any little niggle you can. Be interesting to watch.
Is that Geordie Valadon doing that? Obviously, they had such a good partnership between the two of them last year. If he plays,
it should be everyone. It should be coming from all angles.
Everyone, yeah. It should be one when you get respite from Tommy, then you start on there.
So that's the Melbourne Derby. It's going to be a blockbuster Saturday in the Isuzu A-League, the New Zealand Derby, the Melbourne Derby. Let's talk about the team that's sitting pretty at the top of the league, shall we? They have a nice buffer over Auckland FC. Gents,
Tommy can't wait.
Tommy can't wait for this one. I challenge any of you to give us a superlative that we haven't used about Newcastle Jets this season. It's another win, the 7th in a row. They are absolutely flying.
Well, and it's the type of goals they scored too. Obviously, 2 offset pieces in this game, which Adam Griffiths was fuming about after the game. But they're dangerous in transition. They're dangerous in build-up. They're just dangerous the whole time. I think it goes back to the intent of the team. They're a team that's set up constantly. They're always evaluating how can we hurt the opposition. And I think a team that plays with that and plays with the energy that they do, they're enjoying themselves. It's just so difficult to play against.
Yeah, and the last time they played against Macarthur, it was the 5-4 thriller. There was goals everywhere, but that was the outlier for the Jets in the last 12 games where they conceded lots of goals. They've really tightened up at the back. But when we talk about a mentality, this team really sets it, and Millsy said it from the start. And if you go right back to the Australia Cup when we first started to see them play, or even if you were lucky enough to see some of their pre-season games, when we talk about game management with Al-Hassan Toure, they don't really have game management. No matter the score, it is get the ball back in quickly. Throw-ins, corners, set pieces, unless it's within missile Eli Adams range to shoot, they get it down quickly and they play. And their mentality is, for 95, 98 minutes, we will outplay you because we're better, faster, stronger, we're better on the ball, our movement is better. And that mentality has really just taken over the whole club as a whole. And they just feel that way now. They don't go into a game going, we're going to belt you into submission with the way we play our football, which is wonderful to watch.
And I think if this game has any shades of the last game they played, I think it's going to be a game you don't want to miss, because I think there is going to be goals in this game. Every time Newcastle plays, they're going to score some, but MacArthur's proven that they can also do some damage as well. So this is definitely not one to miss.
Yeah, definitely not one to miss. Shannon Knoll performing pre-match as well at McDonald Jones Stadium. They've actually got a lot of home games coming up at McDonald Jones Stadium against teams that they'll believe they can beat anyone, but they have teams in that list that they will feel as though we are a good chance of getting 3 points against. This time of year, we always start talking about who could be potential bolters for a Socceroos World Cup squad. It's 3 months until Tony Popovich names his squad for the World Cup in America, Canada and the USA. Could Max Burgess be one of those? That question was put to Mark Milligan in his post-match press conference.
Yeah, Burgess has been, he was one obviously early on. I was extremely excited to get because, I think he has some fantastic attributes as a footballer, and from the moment he walked through the door at the Jets, mate, he's been the ultimate professional. He leads by example, and I think Max is still becoming a better player every single day. And look, if I don't want to sort of put any pressures on him or anything like that, but he's still only 30, 31. There's a lot of football for the national team to come up, and I think that he's someone that they should be looking at, and that comes down to the hard work that he's done from the very first moment that he's walked in.
High praise from Mark Milligan, somebody who knows a thing or two about representing his country. Is that a possibility? Is that realistic in your eyes? Tommy, you go first. What do you think? Max Burgess in a Socceroos jersey?
I think he has the attributes, in a parallel world. There's no reason he couldn't have made the Socceroos at some point in his career, but I do think that ship has probably sailed now in the context because, going into a World Cup, playing against teams where it's probably going to be quite even, I can imagine they'll probably go for a more conservative choice. But at the same time, if this was the start of a qualifying campaign and we're going to be playing teams in Asia who we probably expect to have 90% possession and we're really trying to break down low blocks, I think that would have been the perfect situation for him to come in that sixth role in the Socceroos and maybe offer something different. But I can't see him, a few months shy of the World Cup getting a spot, but that's not to say I don't rate him as a player.
He threw Luke Bratton in, didn't he?
Yeah, but Luke Bratton's been playing in that position his whole career. He's bin there 4 weeks, and that's no disrespect. I think he's quality. I was amazed that he was frozen out at Sydney FC, but he has been exceptional. But to play in 4 weeks in a completely different style, that Popper would play in his team as well, when you look at the list of players that are in that position, playing in Europe, have been there, tried and true and tested, to say that he would go to the World Cup, okay, he's not going to play because you've probably got the other ones there who are... We pretty much have our rusted on ones that are there, 2 or 3. And then if he's not going to play, well, and the discussion was Oakland Enkler, the other player who's in that position, well, Oakland Enkler is going to have a lot more career time ahead of him, we would hope, and be a Socceroo for a long time. So we'd take him to be the experience for the experience. You're not going to play, but here you are, because in 4 years' time, you might be our guy. So you'd take him before you're going to take Burgess.
And we've already spoken about this, Macro, off air, but I think as well, it would be great to see some Newcastle recognition in the Socceroos squad, though, because I think they deserve it. And they've been so good as a collective, it's really hard to pinpoint one and say he has to be in, because you could make a strong case for probably 7 or 8 of them, to be honest. But it would be good, I think, to see some representation, the likes of Clayton Taylor or Eli Adams. I think they're a good shout, maybe.
Well, you once compared Lockie Rose to Tim Cahill, so maybe it could be him, mate.
What?
That was very out of context.
Talking of switches, obviously Max Burgess changing position. There have been plenty of people who have arrived in the Isuzu A-League in the mid-season transfer window. That's obviously closed now. We can take a look at some of those introductions to the league. Some of you have arrived back, some are vying for a place at the World Cup, which is D'Agostino, Mitch Duke, Teague, Arzani. Do you think this ranks as arguably the most impactful mid-season transfer window that the competition has had?
We're getting to the point, and we're so used to players leaving in this window, but to see that list, especially the first page, well, even the second page, half of them are internationals.
Yeah, that's right.
Play for the Socceroos. You've got a couple of Kiwi internationals in there as well. You've got guys who have played on the big stage, or guys who have returned who have been dominant in the A-League in the past as well, which is a flip to what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and I think Melbourne City, you've got to say, are probably the biggest winners from that transfer window with those 4 coming in. I think they're 4 of the strongest players in the league, you've got to say, on paper. But you said the word impact. I think that the impact those players are going to have still remains to be seen, because we've got, likes of Zach Clough, who hasn't played yet for Newcastle, and I think he's a really exciting get as well. So I still think the best is yet to come from those new additions.
Yeah, and especially if you mention people like, Melbourne City being the winners. I think, for example, the Ryan Teague deal, Mechelen really rate him, and they didn't want him to not be playing football. I think they've paid something like 98% of his wages. They want him to go to the World Cup because it's good for them, it's good for the player as well. So those sort of players can get those sort of moves and come back and have an impact that they want for the league and for the club and for themselves. It suits everyone. Someone who's had a very good impact on the league of late is Yaya Dukuly. He spoke to Tristan McManus about his struggles going overseas to Reims in the French Liga and the reason why he came back to Adelaide United. Take a listen.
It builds up a lot of character. But I guess for someone like me, I almost don't have a choice, you know what I mean? Like, I'm eldest son, my parents are refugees, I'm a refugee myself, and my parents look at me as their way out.
Well, I mean, the respect that I have for you, even just listening to you speaking here, the pride that you have, not just within yourself, but within your family and in terms of what you do as well, that really is a testament to your whole family and where you've come from and where you will continue to go. Why come back from France?
I think I just understood. I'm so young. Like, if I leave France today, it doesn't mean it's the end.
Dukuly still the shot off the post and in. Welcome back to the A-League, Yaya Dukuly.
Think about it logically. Are you really rebuilding, or you just continue to build on top of what you've already set? And once I put that in my head, like, I don't really care what anyone else says, because that's your opinion, but it's not how it seems to me.
Yeah, beautiful stuff from Yaya Dukuly there, speaking to Tristan McManus. Joining us on the set to discuss that and a little bit more is our expert, Nalin Masto. Nalin, welcome. Welcome back. What have we got for us this week?
Well, yeah, I mean, off the back of that Yaya Dukuly interview, I think we were all moved by how emotional he got, understandably so, being the eldest son. Now, what's interesting is him speaking about the fact that he was able to make that call, that it was time to move back to Australia. I wanted to know from you guys about how difficult that can be for a player, because it's easy to take the move to Europe, but to have that understanding that, you know what, maybe it's time to head back home just for a short period of time. Yeah,
look, I think he expressed it well there, is that it's not a step back, it's just a continuation of his journey. Like for me, when I came back, I was old, so it didn't matter. I was saying, well, I'm coming back to Australia and I'm going to stay in Australia, which didn't happen. But it's just a part of a journey. You know, you can go overseas and it doesn't completely work out for you at that club, and it might be, okay, we go back to a place where it works well, I know I'm going to get game time, and the stepping stone now to Australia and Europe isn't that bad anyway. It's not that hard of a move. There's so many eyes on Australian football. We're seeing so many players go. So if he comes back here a little bit older, a year or two older, and shows what he's doing at the moment, 5 assists and a goal, people are going to say, well, hey, someone else is going to look at him and go, yeah, this guy's worth another chance.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a misconception around players who sometimes they get criticised for coming back too easily. But, you know, I think players can only make the best decisions from the options they've got at that time. That's the only things they can choose from. And, you know, there's so many examples of players coming back to the A-League like Aaron Moy and using it as a platform to re-kickstart his career. And, you know, not everybody has the Harry Kewell perfect career where you go overseas and go from strength to strength to strength and you come home at the end. Like, players might go overseas initially with that in mind, and that's the dream, but that's very rarely
no one
exactly
does that.
So, do you know, with Yaya, that doesn't surprise me the way he comes across there, because I went down to South Australia, I think it was maybe 18 months ago, and there was a South Australian African All-Stars game that was put on. The whole thing was organised by him and Mo Toure. Mo Toure was in France at the time being. Mo organised all the sponsors, everything. They took it off their own back to do it, to give to the community down there, because they know the journey that they've come through and how inspiring it is to some other young kids. Like Nesta, for example. Nesta was going to play, but he was overseas as well. So, like, it doesn't surprise me how smart he is as well.
But also the pressure of being a footballer for yourself. Yeah. But he's got pressure for his family, his community, and he wants to represent that community in the best way possible. To have that pressure as well must be take it to another level, to not just be, it's all about me and I'm going to succeed.
And I think the great thing is that he's still a player that plays with a smile on his face. You can see his positive approach to the game. He takes players on. I think he's one of the most exciting players in the league, and when he does add a little bit more end product in terms of getting goals for himself to his game, I think he will be back overseas because he's got that quality.
What a story. Humble kid as well, and we can't wait to continue to see him in the season. Now, everyone will be focusing on the 2 derbies we got this weekend, but I want to draw everyone's attention to one fixture happening as well, the Mariners against Western Sydney Wanderers. Naka, I think you know what's coming here. It's the time in 2013 when a penalty was awarded for the Mariners, and I think everyone would expect an outfield player like, I don't know, Daniel McBreen to step up and take it, but it was Matty Ryan who stepped up to take the pen. Macca, do you care to explain why on earth you did not take that?
He cost us the premiership, Matty Ryan. And do you know what? He's done nothing in his career ever since.
That was the beginning of the end.
Look, we'd had a bit of a bad run that year on missing penalties. I think we'd already missed 4 that year. I'd missed a couple, Mikey McGlinchey, Monty. Arnie said, who wants to take the penalties? And me and Patrick Swanswyk put our hand up, and then he just went, Matty, at the back. We turn around and Matty's there saying, I'll take it. And I remember walking out with Pat Swanswyk saying, this isn't going to look good on us. And then he missed it. And I remember thinking, this definitely isn't going to look good on us. And I got abused from Arnie after the game saying, you're back on penalties. You should have been on penalties the whole time. And I took penalties from Manila, and the rest is history.
And you have to admit, though, if you're playing a game and the other team in that context, huge game, 0, sends their keeper to take a penalty and they miss, you're going to give it to them. They are going to be hearing about it for the next 20 minutes.
A little bit disrespectful in a way, too.
And to bring that back to the modern day, that was the game, was it not, where the Wanderers went on and they made the 10-game winning streak, which the Jets are now trying to beat.
Yeah. Wow, we come full circle. See, there's a reason to all of this. Now, on to some really bizarre weather conditions that actually happened in the A-League Women's Clash. And I bet you Auckland FC in Wellington will be hoping this doesn't happen to them over across the ditch. The players were struggling to even get the ball before kick-off. They had to reset around several times. The wind was truly causing havoc here. And
it's like the old put the finger on it too when you kick the ball and throw it through the goal.
Poor Priestman was about to get blown away in the head.
A little blowout of...
I mean, that is to a different level. I'm curious to hear from both of you. I think you've both played in the cold before. Tommy, you in the snow, in fact.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
Yeah, I remember there was one game in particular. It used to snow every season, so there would always be 1 or 2 games in the snow, but there was one game, and it was the 23rd of December. Everybody was going on Christmas break the next day. We played an away game. I think it was against Heracles, actually, and they had an artificial field at that time. And it was, they were shoveling the snow off, and I think it was minus 14 or 15 at kickoff or something like that. And it was just awful. And I just remember thinking both teams were just like, it was such a leveller. I was on the bench, and instead of wearing the football boots on the bench like you normally would, I had to wear like these big boots that went up to your knees to keep my feet warm. Yeah. I remember, I think I went on the last 20 minutes, and I was warming up, and I'm like, did not feel warm at all. I'm like, my hamstring could go any second here, and I just remember thinking these are not conditions you want to be playing football in.
Similar thing. You had the hot water bottle. You'd have the joggers on or the hot water bottle. Couldn't feel your toes when you got on the pitch. But I flew back from Australia to Romania. 42 degrees when I got on the plane. When I got off the plane, it was minus 15. It was like Cool Runnings. I had all my clothes on. We went to the mountains and trained, and I was sick for a week.
Yeah. There is, from an average amateur level, there is nothing worse than a Sunday morning when you're about 13 and you rock up and the pitch is rock hard, and then you cop one in the thigh with a size 5 mitre ball. That's the most painful thing ever as a kid that you can experience.
Yeah.
But Bev, she's from the northeast of England.
I was going to say,
she managed Canada.
Coaching Canada, don't they have snow there as well? Yeah. That's different, honestly, different level. But let's cap it off now with someone who we spoke about last week in Mohamed Toure, another Adelaide United product. He set a new record for Norwich City. He's now got 5 goals in 3 appearances. The first ever player to do that in 117 years, gents. We forget that Mohamed Toure actually set the record for the youngest ever goal scorer in the Isuzu A-League at 15 years old. And guess who actually provided him the assist for this game is Riley McBreen, who also is doing bits in the championship as well.
He's doing a fair bit, actually, isn't he, at the moment? Yeah, he's doing very well. I'm just trying to think what I was doing at 15. It definitely wasn't scoring goals in the A-League.
There's a bit of a Socceroos touch to that kind of clip there, because I think Lewis Miller was just in the clip then, Kai Rolls as well, so fair few Socceroos in the picture in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing, hopefully, that Socceroos squad shape out, and a couple of injuries, but at least some boys are performing well as well, which definitely helps.
It is fantastic to see. Should we have a look at the fixtures for this weekend? Round 18, ladies and gents, in the Isuzu A-League. There's some big games coming up, none more so than the derbies that we already touched upon. Obviously, you've got the Melbourne Derby, the New Zealand Derby. I'm going to take the lead on this one. I cannot wait for Sydney against Brisbane Roar. And there is a big backstory to this game. This is the first time that they've met so far this season. The last time they played was in pre-season. This is a game that essentially got abandoned, right? Now, I did some digging on this and I found out the reasons why. So Patrick Wood and Dimitri Valkanis were tussling for a ball down near the corner flag. They ended up rolling around on the floor and it caused an all-in brawl. Rumour has it Dean Bazanis came windmilling into that melee, and then all the players had to be separated. You had Ryan Grant then essentially cut Henry Hoare in half with the tackle, and everyone was told, calm down, calm down, calm down. You had Joel King and Jordan Courtney Perkins were winding up Justin Vidic the whole game, trying to get under his skin. Joe Lolly then joined in that and said essentially, if you score 5 goals in the league this year, I'll give you 10 grand. Chris Long jumped in and went, I'll get in on that bet. And he went, no, you're quite good. I'm not giving it to you. And then there was supposed to be 30 minutes of added time at the end of the game just to get the minutes up. And Casey Rybelt, the ref, went, absolutely not. I'm calling it on here. So I'm going to say that is a game this weekend that has to be watched. Sydney FC against Brisbane Roar. Gents, what are you going to go for?
Vidic has 3 goals, so he might get to the 5 in this game, and I'll be invoicing him immediately if that happens. But
and you can guarantee if he scores, he's going to go straight to Joe Lolly this weekend. What were you picking, Tommy? What game?
For me, I mean, it's hard to go past the Derbies, but for the Jets, MacArthur, given what we saw last time those two teams played, and the Jets, can they do 8 in a row? I'd be a brave person to bet against them.
Yeah, Macca?
I think the Knicks are going to do it.
Yeah.
In the New Zealand Derby, I think they're going to come out with a bit between their teeth, and I'm looking forward to seeing them finally get a win over Auckland.
Yeah. Niles, for you, what's the pick?
Already mentioned it, Wanderers Mariners. I want to see Redder step up, take a pen, and do better than Matty
Hopefully put it in the top 8.
Yeah. At least he won't have a bottle job in the team like Danny McBreen. He should have stepped up and taken the penalty. Anyway, that'll do us for Talay Leagues this week. Thanks ever so much for watching wherever you are. Go out and enjoy the footballers this week, and we'll see you next week on the show.